A detailed psychological profile on you currently exists in a corporate database. It tracks your secret debts, your statistical health risks, and your specific behavioral triggers. It records your income bracket, political leanings, and relationship status. It lists the medications you purchase, whether you exercise, and which category of financial vulnerability you fall into. You have never downloaded their app, signed their terms, or spoken their name. This database belongs to a company called Axiom. As of 2021, they advertise the maintenance of 11,000 data attributes for every one of the 2.5 billion consumers in their global network. 2.5 billion people, 11,000 data points each. Axiom harvests this data and sells access to it. This harvesting has operated legally since before the digital age, turning individual identities into assets for sale, with almost no legal recourse for the subject. Axiom's story began in 1969 in Conway, Arkansas, a small city of 20,000 known for school bus manufacturing. Charles Ward, a local bus company owner and Democratic Party operative, wanted to bridge a gap in political outreach. He believed the Republican Party held a superior advantage in mailing list sophistication and founded Demographics Inc. to level the field for his party. The operation started in a 6,000 square foot building with one computer and a printing press. In those early years, Ward processed data for his own bus factory just to cover the company's operating costs. When Ward's broader business ventures failed in 1975, he sold the company to a management team led by Charles Morgan, an IBM-trained systems engineer. Morgan took over a company with $1.2 million in revenue and a staff small enough to fit in a single conference room. Morgan shifted the company's focus toward behavior patterns. He calculated that if the company could identify who bought a product once, they could predict who would buy it again. By selling these predictive insights to multiple corporations simultaneously, the same data set could be monetized repeatedly. The company rebranded as Axiom Corporation and went public in the 1980s. The name referenced the word axiom, a truth so self-evident it requires no proof. It was a signal that the company's primary commodity was facts. By the time it reached the public market, the company had moved beyond printing mailing lists to become a private intelligence agency for the corporate sector. Axiom spent 3 decades perfecting a specific sequence for harvesting identity. Every commercial interaction meets a trace: warranty cards, loyalty program applications, change of address forms, property records, and voter rolls. Each interaction creates a fragment or the identity attached to a specific transaction. Axiom's business relies on collecting these fragments from thousands of sources, including credit transactions and retail surveys, and stitching them together. The industry calls this customer data integration. This process assembles a comprehensive dossier on you without your knowledge or consent. In 2012, investigative reporting revealed that Axiom was processing 50 trillion data transactions per year. Their database contained 500 million active consumers, and the client list included nearly half of the Fortune 100, including the majority of large insurers and retail banks. By 2014, those figures grew to 700 million consumers. By 2021, Axiom advertised profiles on 2.5 billion people, each containing 11,000 individual data attributes. Basic identifiers like your name and address account for only a tiny fraction of that total. The remaining thousands of data fields consist of intimate behavioral inferences that carry significant commercial consequences. Data brokers slice profiles to score your financial vulnerability. They calculate the likelihood of you making a desperate financial decision in the next 90 days. They bypass the legal protections of medical records by inferring health conditions from purchase history, modeling emotional states and susceptibility to persuasion. They sell this access to anyone willing to pay. A 2014 Federal Trade Commission report documented that these brokers maintained thousands of segments for nearly every American consumer. These segments include labels like rural and barely making it, ethnic second city strugglers, and financially challenged. These rankings of human desperation are sold directly to financial institutions and marketers who use them to determine the terms of your participation in the economy. These categories gain their power from the institutions that buy them. Banks and insurers supplement standard credit scores with these behavioral dossiers to build a granular picture of risk. Predatory lenders use them to identify and target people in immediate financial distress with high-interest products. A 2014 White House report documented this practice as digital redlining. This involves using algorithmic data to systematically exclude specific populations, often defined by race, income, or geography, from the products and services that the rest of the market takes for granted. Three days after September 11, 2001, the FBI descended on Axiom's headquarters in Little Rock, Arkansas, not to investigate the company, to use it. In the immediate aftermath of the worst terrorist attack in American history, the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world came to a private Arkansas data company because it had better information on the attackers than the government did. Axiom's databases contained information on 11 of the 19 hijackers: names, addresses, associated identifiers, behavioral traces, the kind of commercial data that a company accumulates when someone lives in America and participates in ordinary economic life. Axiom's legal team bragged about this publicly. A company executive stood before the U.S. Chamber of Commerce months after the attacks and said explicitly, had a system been in place on September 11 that integrated commercial data with that from the FBI, Immigration and Naturalization, Customs, and other agencies, several of the airplanes certainly would have had extra security directed at them. He was not expressing regret. He was pitching a government contract. And that pitch worked. In the years following 9/11, Axiom aggressively pursued national security contracts, offering its databases and identity resolution technology to government agencies, looking for ways to connect commercial and federal data streams. The company sold data on 2 million airline passengers to a large military contractor that was actively developing a passenger screening system for the Transportation Security Administration. This happened without the knowledge or consent of those passengers. Axiom had already collected the data for commercial purposes. Now it was selling it for surveillance purposes. No one went to jail, no contract was voided, the company continued to grow. By 2013, with congressional scrutiny mounting and a New York Times expose having generated significant public attention, Axiom attempted a maneuver of breathtaking strategic calculation. They launched a website called aboutthedata.com, a consumer portal where Americans could, for the first time, see some of what the company held on them. The CDO appeared in media interviews, presenting this as a revolutionary act of corporate transparency, a bold step toward consumer empowerment. The press largely swallowed the framing. What the portal actually showed was deeply disturbing for two reasons. First, it revealed the scale. People who visited the site discovered that Axiom had placed them in detailed lifestyle categories, assigned them income ranges, flagged their health interests and purchasing behaviors, and built predictive models around their future decisions. One former consumer described seeing the recently deceased family members still in the database, their profile untouched, being sold to advertisers still sending marketing materials to someone no longer alive. The profiles were intimate in ways that most users had never anticipated. Second, and this is where the strategy becomes genuinely sinister, Axiom was asking consumers to correct their own data. The company had acknowledged internally that up to 30% of profile information was inaccurate at any given time. Outdated records, wrong inferences, stale purchase data incorrectly attributed to the wrong person. And their solution to this 30% error rate was to invite the profiled consumers to come in and fix it, for free, to do the data quality control work on the surveillance infrastructure built around their own lives. You were being asked to make yourself more accurately surveilled. Axiom framed this as giving you control. In reality, every corruption you submitted made your profile more valuable, more accurate, and more sellable. The privacy gesture was a data collection strategy. We often wonder why an intelligent system of this scale operates without interference. The truth is simpler. Axiom and the industry it built never had to ask for permission. They grew within the regulatory gaps of laws that were never designed to see them coming. In the United States, there is no single federal privacy law that governs what a data broker can collect, sell, or share. Our existing statutes, HIPAA for health data, FERPA for education, and COPPA for children, only protect narrow, specific silos of information. This leaves the vast majority of your life unregulated. Your purchase history, financial transactions, magazine subscriptions, public records, and loyalty cards exist in a legal gray zone. brokers stitch these fragments together into an 11,000-point profile on your private life. This industry's power comes from a calculated exploitation of that regulatory silence. This chart shows how the industry has lobbied for 30 years to maintain fragmentation. Every time a federal privacy bill is proposed, they mobilize to weaken it. Their defense is that data-driven marketing helps small businesses compete and reduces waste. While technically true, this narrative hides a massive power imbalance. These companies know everything about you, while you know almost nothing about them. This information dictates your insurance premiums, evaluates your creditworthiness, and determines your loan eligibility. It is even used to map out vulnerability segments for predatory businesses to target. California attempted to bridge this gap with the Consumer Privacy Act in 2020, granting residents the right to see their data and request its deletion. But these state-level fixes are often superficial. Enforcement is underfunded, and brokers have already adapted. They process deletion requests, then simply reharvest the same data from different sources a few months later. The industry builds intentional friction into the process. Opt-out mechanisms require separate requests for every individual service and reset the moment you clear your browser cookies. These compliance measures offer the feeling of control without the reality of privacy. In 2018, Axiom's parent entity, LiveRamp, sold its consumer data division to the Interpublic Group, a global advertising conglomerate. The price was $2.3 billion. That transaction transferred 11,000 data attributes per person and 2.5 billion consumer profiles to a company representing nearly every major brand on Earth. A mailing list operation that started in a 6,000 square foot building in Conley, Arkansas, had successfully cataloged the behavioral patterns of nearly every consumer in the Western world. It was sold in its entirety as a standard marketing asset. Acxiom provides the operational blueprint for the modern web. In the 80s and 90s, they perfected identity resolution, the ability to link an anonymous set of behaviors to a specific real-world person. When Facebook and Google needed to prove to advertisers that digital clicks resulted in real-world sales, they adopted these exact profiling and predictive scoring frameworks. The trillion-dollar data economy relies on the same logic of vulnerability segmentation pioneered in Arkansas decades ago. 2.5 billion people were profiled, segmented, scored, and sold to build this market value. They were never compensated. They were never consulted. This is the intended output of the machine. The system is functioning exactly as it was designed. Its ongoing expansion relies entirely on your continued silence.